So here's a question for you. What do Lil Nas X, Muhammad, and Joe Biden all have in common? Well, despite the complete difference in their backgrounds, time periods, and stories, if you criticize any one of them, you will be quick to find yourself in the scope of the mainstream media, blue check Twitter mafia, and oftentimes even your own peers who will be incredibly quick to turn on you. And isn't that a sad thing? Many of you have stories of those in your life that you thought at one point would take a bullet for you. But the second you decided to call out an overtly sinful and sexual video, a 7th century caravan robber, or the mental acuity of a man who has claimed to be in office for 120 years, as he said himself, you're shunned. They completely 180. But again, I guess that's exactly how cancel culture works. These last couple months, as I've watched the chaos unfold and continue to unfold both here in the nation as well as in the West, I've wondered what the end game of a societal prison like this would really be. If we continue to leave no room for civil discussion and we push out any place for a difference of opinion, what will become of us? Countless online voices who have attempted to say things about this have found themselves suspended or outright banned. And many people who try to do this in public settings as well are often quickly labeled as bigots or whatever they're using now in the handbook. As dissenting voices are silenced and the narrative becomes a status quo, the powers that be will have to be more and more extreme in preserving that status quo. We see countless examples of this all throughout the world nowadays. For example, let's just say you lived in an African nation like Nigeria, and you lived in a part of Nigeria where for decades the people have been following Muhammad. They've been following Islam. And then all of a sudden you decide that you're going to say something to insult Muhammad or to blaspheme against the religion. What do you think would happen to you when that status quo has now become threatened? Or another example, let's say you're living in Indonesia, a nation with nearly 87% of its inhabitants saying they ascribe to Islam, and you yourself are a Christian trying to worship on, Palm Sunday. What do you think is more likely to happen living in a place where the status quo is so different from yours? Now you may be tempted to say, well, those type of things happen out there. And I understand that. But even looking at the censorship now here today in the West on YouTube and other platforms, this was unthinkable like a decade ago. And yet look at how quickly things have just broken down. It shows the kind of trend that we're on. And the reality is that none of us and no society is immune, especially if we keep adhering to and accepting and tolerating the very things which will push us towards those more extreme realities of cancel culture. Because look, that's the direction we're going in. Because as the narrative gets stronger and stronger, to quell out dissenters, you need to be much more tough. You need to be much more strict about who can say what. It's just the way it works. And so if we keep tolerating this type of stuff, how long is it going to be before we're completely silenced from speaking our minds? We're thrown in jail. We're even killed. Again, we always think it can't happen to us. We always think that we're the exception until we wake up one day and then we're not. So it's definitely a sobering thought, sobering reminder. Quite frankly, I often personally grapple with how much it's worth it to even invest in this channel, knowing that it could just inevitably get nuked out of orbit one day if it falls into the wrong hands of a trust and safety team member who's just having a bad day. It's a serious thing to think about. And yet at the same time, when I find myself thinking about these things, I always go back to the thought of, well, that's exactly what they want. What's the best way to silence those dissenters? What's the best way to stop any sort of free thought? By discouraging those who would have those free thoughts and want to express them so much that they won't even bother speaking up in the first place. I get that it's a weary fight. I get that it's something that can be so tiring when you see that, again, on another morning, one of your favorite commentators has been banned or suspended, or, they've been demonetized or whatever it may be. I get it. It's frustrating and it's tiring. But for us to just sit down and throw in the towel and give up is exactly what they want, because that will mean that they can just simply go on with their plans unhindered and continue to shut us out, to continue to silence us. And that'll only make things even harder for us down the road. And so there really is no reality where things get easier if we just lay down and do nothing. It's either stand for our rights now or lose them entirely. And so it's an encouraging thing in spite of its difficulty. And it's something that is true, even outside of the West. I firmly believe that if it weren't for the apostasy laws within Islam, that it would not have nearly as much of the influence that it does today. And yet look, because of the strictness that they have, and because of the fact that so many who would leave their religion, so many who would speak out against it, are discouraged from doing so, they don't even bother to raise their voices in the first place. Now imagine if that freedom was there and how much more of a shakeup there'd be within the Islamic world. All right, now when talking about cancel culture, I would be remiss if I did not mention the one that they've been trying to cancel since he was in the womb. I mean, ever since Herod's decree of trying to kill Jesus when he was just, that little baby, all the way up until, what we're even celebrating today with Good Friday and his own people rejecting him and nailing him to a cross or promoting it as the Romans did it. We see how Jesus has constantly had those roadblocks and those pieces of opposition. But it's also in Jesus that we see the perfect kind of response, regardless of whether or not those others are receptive to our efforts. And what is that response? Well, again, despite those roadblocks, despite those hurdles, we saw how Jesus could not be dissuaded or taken away from his mission, taken away from why he was there and the things that he knew he needed to speak and share and do. And we have things that we need to speak and share and do with the world. We have the Great Commission. We're supposed to share the gospel and make disciples and do all of these things. And so if cancel culture gets in the way of that, absolutely, we should be speaking out against it and speaking truth regardless. But we should never let it take us away from the mission itself and get so caught up in politics or whatever it may be that we forget what our main goal is. And so I say all that just to say how I'm still here. My prayer is that you'll still be here and that you'll be speaking up regardless of whether or not there's opposition against you. And so definitely expect to see more type of content like this on my channel. We're going to be exploring a lot more kind of things. I know I've been gone for a while. I put an explanation for that down below if you want to check that out. But again, I just thank you guys so much just for your constant support. And definitely, I just pray for all of you. And so let's keep this fight going as we push through a lot of the opposition that's in the world nowadays. And maybe we just continue to push into Christ more and rely on him as we face more of that conflict. So God bless you. Look forward to making more. I've got a lot more to share with you. And so I'm really excited. Have a great day.